Here's a not so fun fact for you. In the UK, we've had equal pay laws for over 50 years, but on average, women still earn less than men. That's what Equal Pay Day highlights, the point in the year when, based on average earnings, women effectively start working for free compared to men. It's calculated by the Fawcett Society, which is the UK's leading anti-sexism and anti-misogyny charity. In fact, I actually sit on the board of trustees for Fawcett. Fawcett have worked out that Equal Pay Day was on the Saturday the 22nd of November. So for all of December, women are essentially working for free. Now, it's easy to think of the gender pay gap as an abstract day which happens once a year, but it's so much more than that. It's about power, it's about value, it's the financial losses women absorb every single year. So if the law says equal, but the pay slip says otherwise, what does that really tell us? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the DemocraTEA podcast, where we spill the tea on people, power and politics. My name is Anum. At 28, I became one of the youngest members of Parliament elected to Westminster. From the Houses of Parliament to protests on the streets, I've seen up close how power works and how often it doesn't. That's why I started this podcast. It's unfiltered, unapologetic and disruptive. We go behind the headlines and behind the sound bites to challenge the status quo. Now, I'm not a journalist and this isn't just another political podcast. It's about having real conversations about the issues that impact all of us. Today, I'm joined by Penny East, CEO of Fawcett, to spill the tea on people, power and politics. From boardrooms to break rooms, the pay gap tells us everything we need to know about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and who's still being told to wait their turn. Now today, Penny and I have a really interesting conversation around Equal Pay Day, but we also dive into some of the wider issues that women and girls are facing. And before we dive in, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. Since we launched 4 weeks ago, so many of you have got in touch with feedback, and I'm so glad you're enjoying the podcast. I really do appreciate it. We stream DemocraTEA on both YouTube and Spotify, and for the algorithm to push the podcast, it would be really, really helpful if you please hit subscribe. Thank you so much. Let's dive in. I had 4 hours sleep last night, so I'm drinking coffee to keep myself awake. What's in your cup, Penny?
Coffee as well. I'm having a latte, but I'm actually more of a flat white woman myself. But yeah, I'm drinking coffee as well. Very much need it.
A few months ago, I had a conversation with a friend about feminism, and I was telling her how important it is to me and what it means to me. She then turned around and said, well, actually, Anum, I'm not a feminist because I just feel like feminists hate men. Why are we still in a position where we're arguing over the definition?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And it's something that at Fawcett comes up a lot. I mean, we talk about kind of feminist future, and a lot of people talk about, well, what does that actually mean? What does that actually equate to? And I think the word feminism, it's interesting. When I first started, a journalist actually said to me, what does feminism mean to you? And surely, do we even need the Fawcett Society anymore? We're there yet, aren't we? We've made it. We've done it. And to me, that feels quite staggering for people to be questioning the need for feminism. I mean, if you think about the fact that there are 2 million women in the UK right now living in fear in their own homes from an abusive partner, or thousands of women who are losing their jobs when on maternity leave. I mean, there's no question that feminism has done everything that it needs to do. I mean, to me, feminism is simply men and women being treated equally by society. And as I say, we're a long way from that. And actually, when I look at the external environment, certainly in the last year to 18 months, I feel a real fear that not only is progress stalling, there's actually a rolling back of our rights across a number of different agendas.
Sometimes I feel like people who think that feminism has won, that we don't need any need for feminism, are looking at a very small section of society. They see the successful women, they see female prime ministers, they see female leaders, they see women in the boardrooms. But the reality is that's just a small minority of women who have made it to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though women have made it to the top, and that's obviously to be celebrated, the way they're treated when they're there is not the same as men in powerful positions. I mean, if you look at the recent resignation of Angela Rayner, which, without getting into the detail of the resignation, the media depiction of that was grim. I mean, it was classist, it was sexist, talking about things like teenage pregnancies, boob jobs at the age of 30, nasty things about her accent, about the way she looks. It was very, the fact that they are focusing in on those issues as opposed to talking about the actual material facts behind her resignation shows that even when women do manage to get through all that stuff and get to the positions of power of being deputy PM, they are still demeaned in the British press. And of course, as you say, for many women, they won't be able to get to those positions of power because of the structures that they're trying to navigate. So while we may see women increasingly taking powerful positions, whether in government or business or in the third sector, that actually for most women, for their day-to-day life, sexism and misogyny is still affecting them every day and the way that they navigate their life at home and in the workplace.
And then that poses a wider question. We're really happy to celebrate firsts. The first female Prime Minister, the first female First Minister of Scotland, the first woman in a boardroom. But then are we actually addressing the structural barriers in place? Like you say, they face those challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms, also the other thing about kind of women in positions of power, I mean, one thing, I used to work for a domestic abuse charity, and you would come across quite a few examples of women who were in positions of power, either within the police or within the charity sector or within government. And then there would be times where they would disclose things that were happening in their private life that were the counter to what I guess you imagine that someone in that position would be experiencing. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy, that it's actually women who may have achieved a lot in their career may in their personal lives still be very much navigating misogyny, whether that's in their family, in their intimate relationships, or in the kind of broader society. That just because you're on the telly or making decisions in the boardroom, life is more complicated than that. And actually, misogyny and sexism affects women from the day they're born in their personal lives. And just because you see a woman in a powerful position doesn't mean that she's kind of liberated herself from that at all.
It's so interesting. Do you know what that's just reminded me of is back in the pandemic when we saw children who weren't able to go to school, they were at home, both mum and dad were working from home, but actually the majority of the childcare responsibility was put on the women.
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID-19 and the lockdown really shone a light on some of that. I mean, apart from, as you say, the fact that women were disproportionately expected to do more childcare, women were expected to maybe go on furlough in order to look after their children. Also, the fact that there were policy decisions being made at Number 10 during that time, which I don't believe had someone at the table saying, what does that mean for domestic abuse victims? We've just told people that they're not allowed to leave their house except for 20 minutes a day. Now, what does that mean for women where their home is the least safe place for them to be? For many women, going to work, doing the school run, that's their sanctuary. That's when they're free from the kind of abuse and fear that unfortunately is within their own homes. There was actually some moves later on from Number 10 to try and think of ways to support domestic abuse charities to be able to support those women. But the initial decisions around that, I don't think were informed by the fact that for not for everybody is home a safe place. And that just speaks to the fact that you need women around the table making those decisions, because a woman would have said, hang on a minute, there's 2 million women in the UK who are currently being abused in their own homes, and we're going to tell them they can't leave. What is that? What are we going to do for them? And I just don't believe that was part of that conversation when Johnson made the call.
And is that not exactly the problem, that the people sitting around the table are more often than not women?
Yeah, absolutely. Not women, not necessarily representative of women's everyday reality. And having women at the table, whether it's in government, whether it's in tech, whether it's in policy making more generally, is crucial. You see that particularly as well in local government. I mean, local government has got such a long way to go when it comes to equal representation. And yet they are the ones helping deliver local public services, which women, again, disproportionately rely on. And it's just that kind of, I mean, we're actually thinking about doing a project with local councillors to try and improve their understanding of tech-based abuse, because we don't believe that kind of local councillors with responsibilities, whether it's education, whether it's safeguarding, understand the way that misogyny is manifesting itself online. I mean, it's an ever kind of evolving picture. You have to have representation, not just in terms of gender equality, but really representing and understanding the current challenges. And that means far better representation.
And I think one of the big challenges is that we talk about women as one big homogenous block, but women aren't a monolith. We have different we come from different classes, different ethnicities, follow different faiths. People can be identifiably following a faith. Some people might reject all faith. We're not a monolith, but sometimes it feels like policy will look at women as a whole, that we all are exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the we really have to understand it through those different lenses, whether it's through class, race, religion, any type of background or identity where a woman will be facing dual or multiple discrimination. One example of that recently, we're doing a lot of work around maternity and paternity leave and reforming parental leave. And one of the kind of recommendations that's very much front and center in the sector is about increasing paternity leave and a kind of use it or lose it idea to get more dads to take extended leave. We think that's absolutely the right thing to do and we advocate for it. But it's really important to think about what that means for a person in a coercive relationship. So a person who might have recently separated from the father of their child, or whether a relationship is coercive, dysfunctional or abusive in some way. What does that mean if you create a system where the dad has to take that leave, if that relationship isn't to the point? So it's that kind of looking through ideas that sound like they're good, and they are good. And for a lot of women, they'll be hugely benefit, but it needs that nuance to know that not all women's experiences are the same. We don't, unfortunately, all have the fathers of our children standing there proactively saying, please let me take more. It's not always like that for a lot of women. And whether that be because of the particulars of a relationship, or whether that be because of their experiences growing up, or whether that be because of their identity and the discrimination they've faced because of that, we aren't all having the same experiences, and policy decisions need to be nuanced around it.
But is that not one of the issues as well, is that I think it was the term intersectionality that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw many years ago. That kind of word still feels like a buzzword. And actually, there's not that really nuanced understanding of the layers that a woman can have.
Yeah, intersectionality, absolutely. It does feel, I think sometimes when we put it in reports and we put it in briefings, it's absolutely vital, but it's vital that we actually break it down in terms of what we mean rather than just saying it. Like, there has to be an intersectional lens. It's actually, what does that mean in practice? So if we were talking about the fact that the motherhood penalty, for example, so when mums go back to work and they find that their careers are stalling, this is more pronounced for Black mothers. Or if we talk about maternity units, which we know are unsafe, we know that I think it's half of all maternity units have been deemed unsafe. We know that Black mortality rates are far more pronounced than white mortality rates when it comes to women giving birth. So we have to kind of put that idea about intersectionality within those very practical examples to make it real for people. To say, hang on a minute, these things that are happening are disproportionately affecting women in different ways, whether it's single mums, whether it's through class, whether it's through religion. It's not about buzzwords. It's not about academia. It's about having a genuine analysis of that and trying to work out why.
I think that's fascinating. But that's one of the issues with government, well, that I feel anyways, is that buzzwords like intersectionality are just stuck on a report or a policy paper, and that's them patting themselves on the back thinking, yeah, we're thinking of all women.
Yeah, and I think now what I feel is a real concern with government at the moment and politics at the moment is because of this fairly extreme and sharp shift to the right, that government and policymakers are going to be even less inclined to lean into understanding things like intersectionality or indeed any kind of rights-based conversation, because they don't want to kind of feed into a narrative of them being woke or anti-free speech or, whatever it might be, that there's that agenda is really being set by the media and by certain, I would say, kind of bad faith actors. And we need to make sure that when we're talking about stuff that is true, like it's true, like Black mothers have a worse time than white mothers. It's not woke to say that. It's not kind of, and I think I feel like in the next few years, we've got a real battle ahead of us in terms of making sure that the stuff that we've been advocating for years doesn't get more diluted and more lost because government feels concerned about it being accused of being left-wing or woke or any of those other terms that I think are used to shut down debate.
Does that not speak to a wider problem that we're just not able to have nuanced, reasonable, rational debate? I mean, I think of one of the far right protests that recently occurred in Scotland, because Scotland is not an exception to racism, bigotry, fascism. But one of the far right marches, I have a family friend who went along. She's a woman of colour. And the far right protesters were screaming about how they're there to protect women and girls, and they want to challenge violence against women and girls. But then they were swearing at this women of colour. It just feels absolutely bizarre that that's the daily reality that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean it's horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. I mean, I saw a clip a couple of weeks ago, and that was of a young girl, and she was at one of these far right rallies. She was a white girl, young girl, and she was on stage, and she was started, and it was like lots of people talking about their own personal experience of things like sexual assault, abuse, very much of that kind of framing of we're here to protect our women and girls. And this young girl started talking about the fact that she had suffered sexual abuse from a family member who was white, and she was making the point that that kind of horrendous abuse can come from lots of different sources, family members. She was dragged off the stage. She was dragged off the stage by the other protesters because even though it was kind of set up as this like safe space to share your own experiences, as soon as she shared a experience that didn't fit their narrative, she was told to be quiet.
And can I ask, was it men pulling her off the
Yes.
stage?
Yeah.
And does that not just speak to the issue that we're seeing?
They are interested in it feeding their agenda rather than genuine debate about men's behaviour towards women.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. And when we look at the waves of feminism that have come across the years, we've seen kind of first, second, third wave feminism. I think now, in 2025, we truly are looking at a more intersectional type of feminism. But I suppose even when we're pushing for women to get to the very top of their businesses, of politics, yeah, that's amazing that they're there. But I suppose the women who are working class, the women who are of colour, women who are disabled or from different communities, actually that large majority aren't heard.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think how we bring them to the table and make sure they're part of the conversation is really crucial to Fawcett. And it's what I definitely want Fawcett Society to be doing over the next few years. We are in a kind of privileged position. We have privilege, we have power because of our history, because of our heritage. We do get invited to those tables where ministers or policymakers want to hear our view. I want to be going to those tables knowing that I have the collective sense of what all women want to be part of those conversations, rather than it being seen through a kind of predominantly white, middle-aged, middle-class lens. I think the other thing to talk about also is age. I mean, I speak as someone that's definitely not young anymore, but I think amongst kind of feminists my age, that sometimes we look at younger feminists and say, where's the rage? Where's the anger? Where's this? Where's that? But as more I've looked into it, the more that it is younger women navigating it in their own way. The rage still exists. They are still absolutely fighting against stuff. And it's about how do we cross those generational divides rather than looking at each other being like, you're not doing it how I would have done it. You're not expressing it how I would have expressed it. Actually, the kind of core purpose and the core kind of emotional feeling around it, there's so much common ground. There's so much common ground. Anyone who's grown up in a household with a dominant father or had a relationship that's coercive or had that boss that was kind of sleazy and made you feel uncomfortable, we all know what that feels like in the pit of our stomach. Just because we have different words and different ways of talking about that, we know what we're rallying against, and we just need to find common ground to do it together.
And I suppose that's truly what feminism is meant to be, that we all support each other in whatever experiences that we have. And my feminism might look a little bit different to your feminism. And actually thinking about that and looking at it a little bit wider, how important is it to Fawcett to ensure that we're not just constantly looking at gaining equality with men at the very top, we're actually supporting women at the very bottom of the ladder?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that, Fawcett has done a lot of campaigning around female representation in government, which, in Westminster, which is very important in the sense of just what we were saying about women having a voice in policy making. But it's really also about work, all types of work, and also the home as well. I mean, a lot of the work that we've done around things like equal pay is looking at how women are paid less, nationally in all different types of jobs, how they are not being supported to get the promotions or get the support they need. I think also a lot of the stuff around things like employment rights, and I don't know if this is the fault of the charity sector or policymakers or the media, but we do a lot of work around employment rights and getting women more support and rights in all different types of work. But the media depiction of it always tends to be pretty corporate. It's always like a woman with a laptop on her lap and like a toddler, and she's working flexibly, she's working from home. Actually, a lot of women's jobs don't look like that. They are frontline. They are in the public sector. They're on the factory floor. They are not sitting in Starbucks working flexibly with their toddlers around them. And I don't think it's necessarily that charities have fed into that narrative, but it's certainly the media depiction of things like flexible working is always quite solidly middle class. We need to be thinking about how things like the Employment Rights Bill are being implemented for all women in all workplaces rather than just big corporate offices where women can now work from home. It's got to be broader than that.
For women, what are the biggest challenges when it comes to employment?
There's a few. I think one of the biggest challenges is obviously sexual harassment in the workplace. So we see around 40% of women at some point have experienced sexual harassment of some description within the workplace. I mean, obviously, we recently just saw that Panorama episode of the Met Police and the undercover nature of that. And obviously, there were lots and lots of examples within that explicit racism, misogyny, not listening to domestic abuse victims. But the other thing that struck me was that internal culture. There's that one police officer, I think he's a sergeant, who is just talking about his own sexual escapades, like really loudly in a really grim way in the office. There are men like that in offices and workplaces all over the country who think what they're doing is banter in inverted commas, but actually they're making women deeply uncomfortable. And I think women being able to speak up against conversations like that happening in a place of work, women are so often depicted as kind of like, oh, have a sense of humour. It's a place of work. If women are going to be treated with respect on equal terms as men, you can't have a male boss talking about his sex life in front of young women. You just can't. And we have to be able to say that's unacceptable without having accusations of being like woke or, overly sensitive or all that stuff. It's rubbish. And so I think sexual harassment in the workplace is one of the key barriers to women being treated equally.
That still happens in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. I met a young woman actually recently who told me that she got her dream job. It was in Scotland actually, and it was working as a ranger. I won't say the part name because I'll probably get in trouble. It was working as a ranger, and it was her dream job. And yeah, one of the older men who was obviously in charge of this and this and this. Every time he had a drink in him, he'd be really physical with her. He would send her inappropriate WhatsApp messages at 1 a.m. He's just making her highly, highly uncomfortable. And then in the end, she made a complaint. And when it came to renewing all the contracts, she was the only new one that didn't get her contract renewed. And she moved back down to London. And it was her dream job. It was absolutely everything that she'd wanted to do. So that's the thing. It's not just the fact that it's unacceptable in the moment, that what she experienced there is unacceptable. Her life course has genuinely changed because of him. Like she could have been, that's where she wanted to be. She wanted to be doing that job. She wanted to be in Scotland. She didn't want to be in London. And now her life looks different. And she's got to work out a different way to get back to where she wants to be because of him. And not only because of him, because the infrastructure in that place of work was not set up to support her. And she was held accountable for his actions.
I'm speechless.
No.
The trajectory of her life has changed from that one experience because a man was protected rather than called out. That is, oh my goodness, I genuinely am speechless.
Yeah, it's grim. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's whenever we talk about these things, we always, I don't know if it's kind of easier to talk about it in that way, but we always talk about it in that moment rather than looking at the long-term impact. So for example, if we think about teenage boys accessing lots of kind of deeply misogynistic content online, like AI generated stuff or whatever it might be, that we think about it, what is the teenage boy in that moment? Like what's happening to him in that moment? But I think it's so much harder to think about what is the long-term impact of that. That teenage boy's values, his way of seeing women, they're all being developed at that time.
Definitely.
Like, what does that mean when that guy gets his first girlfriend, his first wife, his first job, his first whatever? Like,
How is he going to treat women?
How is he going to treat women? It's a long-term issue. It's not just, oh, that 15-year-old might be, say, a few dodgy things in school. His value set is being created at that time. Like, what does that mean long-term? But yeah.
And I just don't think that's a conversation we're having. I mean, I look at young boys and young men. It's so easy to access misogynistic content online. Back in the day, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you'd really have to go to the depths of the internet to find misogynistic content. See, nowadays, Penny, you can be scrolling on TikTok and you'll see Andrew Tate's of the world or wannabe Andrew Tate's make deeply misogynistic comments. And yeah, these young boys are going to look at that, think that's really normal because they're just seeing guys sat around a table having these conversations. And surely that's going to have an impact on how they view women, how they view relationships, how they view sex, and how they view power.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many examples where you kind of just staggered that it's happening, especially big tech firms as well. I mean, recently, Snapchat, I think it was a few months ago, eventually agreed to change a filter because they developed a filter where you could put up a picture of whatever girl you wanted, and then you could basically make her look as bruised and as bloodied as you.
Shut
Yeah.
up. No.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the end, there was like a little mini campaign on social media, and in the end, they were like, "Okay, fine, we'll get rid of the." It's like, in what like legitimate reason could someone want to use a filter where you can then make a girl look like she's been beaten up?
There's no legitimate reason. There's no legitimate reason.
I mean, there's apps as well now where you can upload any picture of any woman or girl, and it will give you the photo of what they think she looks like naked. So it will look at her, yeah. And that's been used in like primary schools in year 6. Like, there's evidence of that being used. And again, like, there's no legitimate reason for that app to be developed. And if you look at it, the way they've developed, they don't even work on boys' bodies. They literally only work on girls' bodies. They are entirely developed to demean and belittle women. I was listening to the radio a few weeks ago. I think it's the Children's Commission was talking about the fact that they've seen evidence in girls in school hiding under desks to stop boys taking photos of them because they don't know what the boy is then going to do with that photo, what app he's got on his phone, where he's going to. So it's not because of AI and because of the way that technology is being developed. It's so hard to keep up, but there just seems so little regulation around these things that are being developed, where the only purpose of them can be to demean women. And yet, and these things, as you say, they're not niche. They have been downloaded thousands of times.
Wow. And the UK government brought forward the online safety bill. Is legislation like that going to help and make a difference?
I think it will help and make a difference to a point. I mean, it was really interesting to see how much pushback there was around that. And that's what I was talking about before, is that kind of this idea of freedom of speech, which of course is hugely important, but it being used online to basically prevent the protection of children. I mean, you know, since the beginning of time, we have had regulations to protect children, from things like not marketing alcohol to under 18s to having even like age grades on movies. You know, forever we have lived in a society where we're like, you know what? It's our responsibility as adults to make sure that little kids can't access stuff that's going to mess them up. And then as soon as you move it onto an online functionality, like those freedom of speech campaigners aren't like, kids should be able to watch The Exorcist. Like, you know, they've all accepted that there are kind of in more traditional media formats like film, or that there are boundaries. And yet as soon as you move it onto social media and online, everyone's like, oh, you can't do that because it's freedom of speech. And you're like, we're talking about 13-year-old boys, 13-year-old girls. Like, it's our responsibility to make sure that they don't access things that are going to genuinely mess them up and mess up their value system and the way that they see other girls or the way that girls see boys. Like, to me, it doesn't feel controversial at all.
Do we just stop kids using the internet then?
I don't think we need to stop them using the internet, but I think that we need to definitely make sure that we've got regulation. I mean, I'm going to say obviously with the tech companies, but I say that with a shrug of the shoulders because it feels like a real losing battle to get tech companies, especially, I mean, Elon Musk actually was one of the ones that has developed, or his team has developed, this AI girlfriend. So you can get an AI girlfriend on your phone, and she is programmed to be entirely compliant. Like, so she just flatters you the whole time. Yeah. So of course, if a boy has got a girlfriend that he's developed online and said this is what she wants to look like, and she's in his phone, And then
And she's completely compliant.
and
That's
she's
what he's going
completely
to see on real
compliant.
life.
Yeah, exactly. And then they get a real girlfriend and tell
she's
you
not
what, she's not compliant,
compliant.
and they're not happy about it. You know,
Or they abuse her to ensure that she is compliant.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Is like, I mean, you would hope. Don't think all adults are capable, but like, you know, adults need to understand that things like AI is being developed to flatter us. I mean, even like ChatGPT is developed to flatter us. Like if you put in the worst business idea you could possibly think of, it will write back and be like, good one.
Great idea.
Yeah, you're so
well
smart.
done. You're in a roll.
Yeah, exactly. I love what you did there. Like its business model is to flatter because you go back to a thing that makes you feel good about yourself.
It gives you that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah, exactly. As adults, we need to be able to kind of treat those things with a pinch of salt and know to approach them responsibly. You know, 13-year-olds are not adults. Like whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's an AI girlfriend, whatever it might be, we have a responsibility to educate and support them to be able to navigate the internet safely, because otherwise they're going to grow up with some really toxic, difficult value sets, which are going to affect their relationships and they're going to affect equality.
What steps can a parent take to protect their young girls from online harm?
Well, it's the first thing I think is kind of around education and awareness. So being aware of the way that these different online platforms or apps manifest themselves. I think the other thing, I mean, the government has announced that they are introducing anti-misogyny educational kind of modules into the curriculum. I think it's for secondary school. It should really start in primary school. The other thing I would say is also around kind of male allies within the home. That is the other thing is, I mean, to be honest, the thought of a kind of lesson at school about anti-misogyny is going to have a really hard time to go up against the Andrew Tates of this world who are saying women want to be treated horribly, and if you do this and do this and do this, you'll get a hot girlfriend and a fancy car and you'll live the life that I am living. You know, a teacher in a secondary school is standing up and saying, don't hate women. It's not going to... So I think really important kind of male allies within our own homes, whether it's dads, brothers, uncles, friends, of them stepping up and them, you know, it doesn't need to be kind of some great heroics, but just saying like, Andrew Tate's a charlatan. Like Andrew Tate is an absolute charlatan. He doesn't own those cars. You know, you kind of just, but it needs men to speak up, because the thing is with women speaking up is that there are groups of men who just will not listen to us. And the fact that the more women speak up, the more kind of, that's almost the goal for them. Like a woman being angry about it is like they've, you know, if Andrew Tate could hear me now, and he's not going to hear me now, but if he could hear me now, this is great for him. Like he loves women like me, like middle-aged women, feminists, like saying what a bad thing he is. So we have to get young men to step up and to speak up, because that is the only way we're going to dismantle this kind of pervasive sense that Andrew Tate and all the thousands of mini Andrew Tate imitators have got the answer.
Did you ever watch Adolescence on Netflix?
Yeah.
I think that scared a lot of us when we saw that kind of incel culture and young boys' attitudes towards girls. But I think the big question a lot of us asked afterwards is, what protections or what support mechanisms can we put in place for parents to help their young boys navigate this life of AI, of artificial intelligence girlfriends, of seeing misogynistic content online? What steps can we do to help parents navigate life for their young boys?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky. And I think the main thing that I would say is that parents kind of, as I say, speaking to their children about it as openly as possible, not being afraid to have the conversation, making sure that you have some responsibility about whether you're putting kind of protections on the phone or taking the phone off them. I mean, there's a good advert, I think it's in Australia, going around, which is like a young boy on his phone and his dad saying goodnight to him. I don't know, he's maybe like 9 or 10 years old, the boy. And then and he's got his phone in his hand, and then the camera pans out and it's got kind of all the different, it's got like a woman that looks like kind of like she's about to have sex with somebody, and then there's kind of bullying people, and then there's a scammer, and it's like you wouldn't leave your kid in a room with all those things. Yeah,
wow,
you wouldn't.
yeah.
But yeah, they all exist on that young boy's phone, and he is looking at that at 1 a.m. in the morning, you know. I think parents definitely, there's lots more that we could do to support them, as I say, around kind of information and awareness. But I do think that government also needs to make sure that it can't be just down to parents to try and navigate this, because kids are smart and they will always find ways around stuff. So it's how does government kind of make the tech companies be more responsible, and also to bring in the legislation to protect kids. And as I say, also working with schools as well, really investing in not just like one anti-misogyny lesson a year and hoping that will solve it, but really, really invest in kind of an educational program to support young boys.
And it just feels like, regardless of what age you are as a woman, there's some challenge that you face. And we know the end of November marks Equal Pay Day. What impact does that have on women?
Yeah, I mean, equal pay day. So equal pay day is when we work out when essentially women get stopped being paid in relation to their male counterparts. And there's lots of different reasons for that, both in terms of things like the motherhood penalty. So we see women's pay decrease once they become mums and they go back to work, but also later in life on things like the menopause. Again, women's salaries can take a hit. There's also a fair amount of the gender pay gap that's kind of unexplained. And we think that that is just kind of pure discrimination, where essentially women are just being paid for the same work. As you said, like it's been illegal for 50 years, but absolutely still happens. I think the thing is with equal pay is there's the kind of statistical analysis around it in terms of whether the gap is widening or narrowing each year, which obviously Fawcett has a role in doing that analysis. But it's really important to think about the kind of real life experiences of women behind that. I mean, I have a friend myself who's nearly 50. And she has worked every day of her life since she was 16. And she's had a number of she's had two really, really challenging relationships. She's got two kids. And both of her kids are kind of moving out of home. And she can't afford the rent anymore. The landlord is selling the house and she's had to declare herself homeless. And she's probably going to be put in a hostel. Like, she's 50 years old. She's worked every single day. Like, these are the real life examples where women don't get paid what they need to get paid. Like, she has done everything that society has asked her for. And yet at 50 years old, she's going to be in a hostel. She's going to declare herself homeless. And so I think, now, I'm not saying that obviously low pay and insecure work obviously affects both men and women. And there will be a number of, and many men as well, who have experienced poverty despite going to work. And so kind of low paid insecure work is a problem for all workers, of course, but it does disproportionately affect women. And yeah, we see that women, unfortunately, are getting paid less than men. And that actually last year when we did our analysis, the gap had widened for the first time, I think, in a decade. So
why was that?
Well, we're not sure. It's only widened slightly, but that kind of, as I say, that unexplained portion means that we think that there's more kind of explicit discrimination happening. Certainly some of the stuff that we're advocating for, like end salary history, which is getting employers to not ask previous employers what somebody was paid, because they should be judging the salary based on the role rather, because obviously that then continues to entrench the inequality that they might have experienced in the previous job. But also, I mean, we're doing some research at the moment and talking to women in a particular sector, and they were telling me that they have in their contracts clauses to ban them from speaking to colleagues about what they're getting paid. So it's kind of...
Is that not illegal?
No.
That's allowed?
Yeah. So people, that kind of lack of pay transparency. So, and yeah.
And is that like big companies,
Yeah.
multinational companies, or just like small wee firms?
Well, it's a mix, I think, but certainly, I mean, multinational companies have to report their pay gap. So any organisation over 250 employees has to report their pay gap. And what we're seeing with government is that they are now bringing in what they're calling kind of pay gap action plans. So getting companies to produce action plans, not just to report the pay gap, but to say what are they doing to close it. It's really important that those action plans are ambitious enough and not tick box. Because action plans of kind of making sure you've got a diverse interview panel or something like that. It's just, it needs to be more structural
like
than just a couple
of pink paper and nice font.
Exactly.
Give themselves a pat on the back.
Exactly.
It's one of the big issues, not that women's work is just not acknowledged as proper, meaningful work. Women are called heroes, given a pat on the back and then told to get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true in work, and I think it's true in the home as well. I mean, Unfortunately, even though women have definitely over the last few decades been more present in the workplace, that has not necessarily equated to a more even split of domestic labour. We find that a lot of women are still doing 2 or 3 times more kind of child-rearing and domestic responsibilities than men. And I think that apart from the fact that that has an impact on women's well-being and mental health, that they are responsible for so much, it also affects their ability to compete and work with men on equal terms in the workplace. If you know that every day you're the one that has to pick your kid up at 3:10, or you're the one that has to make sure that the house is clean, how you're going to compete with a bloke where he can work however many hours, it's not possible. So I think it's important that when we talk about women at work, we also talk about the domestic home life as well, because that is one of the barriers to women being able to compete with men, is that they're still trying to juggle it all.
I'm chronically online, and one of the days when I was scrolling on TikTok, I came across a woman talking about how, or I can't remember if it was her or someone was talking about this story about a woman who's an author, and she was saying that her mum came and stayed with her for a couple of weeks, and the amount of work she was able to do in writing her book was unreal, because her mum just came in, did the childcare, did the house cleaning, did all that work. But actually, so often that's unseen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think women, and this isn't blaming women at all, but I think that women have a kind of, they find humour in some of the situations. Like if you look at social media, and I'm chronically online as well, if you look at like Instagram and you look at kind of mum Instagram, it's very much like women doing...
I'm juggling it all.
I'm juggling it all, exactly.
Look at me.
Or like, isn't it funny when I wake up at 2 a.m. and like I've got my to-do list wrapping around my head and my husband's like snoring next to me. Lots of things like that, which is kind of like either self-congratulating in terms of I'm doing it all, or kind of taking the mick out of it, and it kind of like, oh God, I'm so stressed and I'm so overwhelmed and I'm doing an email while dropping the... But the reality behind that is like, what does that mean that you are the only one that is doing that to-do list at 2 a.m. in the morning because for whatever reason, I'm sure he's working hard or whatever it might be, but he has not got that kind of mental list constantly going in his head. I mean, I went to my kids' sports day over the summer before they broke up, and I had 3 separate dads say, what class is my kid in? Like what class? Like looking for where they need to stand. And you're like, that's at the end of the year and you don't know the name of the class teacher or the name of the class. Like, I'm telling you, the woman knows. She knows. And it's that kind of, it's not the lack of concern, because I mean, he's at sports day and he's probably like dad of the year or whatever, but that kind of logistical, keeping the show on the road stuff, they're just a bit liberated from it. I mean, obviously not all men, but like there are a lot of women who are taking upon they're working full time and they're taking all the logistics and the admin and the kind of mental load of looking after kids. And that is knowing that Tuesday is PE day or the name of the class teacher, like it's not rocket science, but it's constant. And I mean, that's the thing. I was like at an event recently and people were talking about male allies, how to be a male ally. And these men were kind of having all these great ideas about we should set up a website, we should do this thing on social media, we should da-da-da. All great, but like they didn't like this answer. But one of my things was like, but also look at yourself. Like when was the last time you cleaned the bathroom? When was the last time you did this? When was the last time you did that? Like fix the small stuff first in your own home. Like the great ideas about how to support women generally are fab, but also think about your own everyday decisions that you make. Like she doesn't want to clean no one wants to clean the bathroom. No one wants to do that. Like,
I hate cleaning the bathroom. Worst job in the house.
I hate cleaning most things. So it's like someone's doing it. Someone is doing it. And like, if it's not you, who is it? And so it's kind of looking at those small everyday decisions that you make in your life about how you treat, whether it's your wife, whether it's your girlfriend, whether it's sister, whether it's your mum, looking at those everyday things about whether you're giving kind of the respect and support that they deserve.
Is it not just easier though for women when they are having to deal with that mental load, when they're juggling so much on their plate, to turn around and be like, do you know what? I've brought this up so many times. I'm not going to continue bringing it up. I'm just going to get on with it. We see that translate, I suppose, both in the personal and in their professional life.
That is you do see that where women, I think especially in work life actually, where women kind of get to the point where they just start doing it all because it's easier to do it all. I mean, there's a kind of term, and I really don't want to like bash all men at all. Like I know that a lot of men do step up, but there's a term about kind of like strategic incompetence sometimes with blokes where they say things like, oh, it's not that I didn't care about the school stuff. It's just that I'm not very good at that kind of thing. In their job every day, they are absolutely perfectly capable of keeping an inbox like monitored, of going to meetings, of being prepared. And then they're going home being like, I'm just bad at that stuff. I don't really know anything about, when sports day is or anything like that. They can do it when they're being paid to do it. So it's not this kind of, and I think sometimes, yeah, men, I think maybe they believe it, the narrative in their own head, or I'm just not good at that stuff. But as I say, they can be good at it. Of course, they can be good at it. Lots of these things aren't rocket science. It's just that someone's got to do it.
What impact does that have on young girls when they see their fathers kind of portray less strategic incompetence? Again, not all men,
Yeah.
but a significant majority.
Yeah.
When they see their fathers portraying less strategic incompetence and then their mothers just having to get on with it, what does that mean for the next generation of girls?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we actually talk about a lot when we talk about things like equal and reformed parental leave. I think it has a really immediate effect, obviously, on the women's ability to work on equal terms as men. But I think that's exactly the point, that actually one of the biggest factors in it is it generational, is the fact that if you are a young kid, whatever content you might or things you might hear, feminist theory or whatever it might be, if you are watching a situation where mum is basically burning out to keep everything on the road and dad is like going to work every day and doing his thing, but then coming home and just sat on the sofa or seeing his mates, and just that, kids absorb stuff by osmosis. Doesn't matter what you say. If that's what and both for boys and for girls. I mean, young boys growing up, with their fathers are the first kind of male role model in their lives. And it doesn't matter, as I say, kind of what is happening at school or what we can try and kind of embed in them, that if that's what they're watching, that's what they'll absorb and that's what they'll mirror in their own grown-up relationship.
Let's start that again. When we talk about terms like equal pay, very often just talking about women, and I think in our minds we've all got an idea of what a woman looks like, but as I've said before, women are not a monolith, we're not a homogenous block, we've all got loads of different experiences. How do we ensure that Equal Pay Day is also representing those women who are women of colour, who identifiably follow a faith, who are disabled, who are working class?
Yeah, the government have actually, they are putting plans in place to make sure that corporations report both on their race pay gap and also their disability pay gap, so that there is increased data and awareness that actually for disabled women and women of colour, that they are going to be paid even less compared to their white counterparts, both in terms of compared to men, but also in terms to white women. And we at Fawcett have been very supportive of those plans. But firstly, there needs to be enforcement around it. It's all very well kind of having greater awareness of it, but actually it's that, what is the proactive action happening in those companies to close those gaps? But also, as you say, there needs to be the intersectional analysis. So there's constant this idea of kind of siloing it over here, right? We'll look at disability over here, but actually it's how do they all intersect with one another, rather than constantly looking at different identities in silos. So we're really supportive of government putting more of a lens on the pay gap when it comes to race and when it comes to disability, but it has to be intersected with gender. The other thing that I just want to say on the pay gap more broadly is around kind of what we see in the future around the pay gap, which really looking at AI and the way AI is embedded within workplaces. And we have real concerns that without the necessary safeguards, AI could widen the pay gap, both in terms of things like recruitment AI tools, which have been shown to disproportionately reject women because they are looking at, you'd think that kind of something that was hopefully didn't have humans, that it would be more objective, but it looks at things like, let's say there's a career break in your CV and will reject someone based on that. So looking at things that, again, disproportionately women, but also on things like job loss and women going part-time because AI is essentially doing their jobs. It's not that AI is here to stay, and it's actually got a lot of advantages for women as well, but we really want there to be the necessary safeguards to make sure that it's not another lever in which women are disproportionately negatively affected in the workplace.
And if a woman is impacted by the equal pay gap, or she feels like she's impacted, what steps should she take to rectify that?
Well, the first thing she should be is speaking to HR, speaking to somebody internally. She should be calling for there to be pay transparency, so asking for kind of transparent conversations either with the HR team, and I know some businesses don't have dedicated HR resource, so it might be with her manager. So I would definitely always encourage women to try and get answers internally. But if that doesn't work, you could absolutely come to Fawcett. We've got loads and research and evidence and practical support on our website. And then obviously you can take it to the legal route in terms of taking your employer to court around it. But I would definitely encourage women to have that conversation internally first. But just because you don't get the answer you want doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it further, and definitely come to Fawcett. And there's lots of evidence and information that might be helpful to you.
It feels like Fawcett are doing quite a few different things in terms of the wider women's sector. What are the kind of top 3 reasons a woman should join Fawcett?
Top three reasons women should join Fawcett. So firstly, I would say is that external environment, is the fact that progress, it's not just stalling. I genuinely have concerns that our rights are going to be rolled back in the next 5 to 10 years if the current political climate keeps changing the way it is. So join Fawcett and help us fight back. I would say definitely on the second one is around AI. And again, that's kind of really looking at the future. There aren't many women's organisations that are looking at the intersect between AI and gender equality, and we are. But we really need support to be able to advocate for the kind of practical recommendations around AI. And the third one I would say is just kind of coming together with other like-minded women, feeling a sense of community. I mean, I've been at Fawcett now for 5 months, nearly 6 months, I want to say. And that is one of my absolute priorities. We are a membership organisation, but we really need to make sure that that means something. And that means finding ways where women can help shape our campaigns, shape our recommendations, and really feeling like it's a kind of sense of collective action rather than a kind of organisation doing things to people.
Of course, I sit on the board of trustees, so I'm going to echo absolutely everything that you've just said. We've come to the final section of the podcast, and it's called That's My Cup of Tea. It's a this or that quick fire round, so don't think too much about the question. Just whatever comes to your mind. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
That was very, very quick. Yeah. What are you currently reading?
Oh, what am I currently reading? Gosh. I'm not reading anything at the moment.
What's your Netflix show then that you're currently watching?
What's Netflix show am I watching? I actually watched an episode of a series called Untamed last night, but yeah, I got quite bored and turned it off.
Got it, okay. Because I'm actually just being really selfish right now and looking for Netflix recommendations.
I wouldn't recommend. It was really slow moving. I wouldn't recommend it.
If you could have dinner with any feminist, past or present, who would you want to have dinner with?
Right now, past or present, I guess I might say Jess Phillips, only because I want to ask her more about their pledge about halving violence against women and girls, find out some more information.
Okay, so from a work capacity, fair enough. What's your go-to comfort food?
Spaghetti bolognese.
Oh, okay, like a spaghetti bolognese. It's not something that I make very well, though. In times of stress, what is a quote that gives you comfort, that keeps you going?
I can't remember the exact quote, but there is a quote saying something like, "The only way is through." And that is like a kind of, and sometimes that kind of leaning into the hardness of something is really helps me, because sometimes when you're doing things around gender equality or in lots of different charities, the challenges are so insurmountable. You're dealing with kind of societal challenges that has been there since the beginning of time. It can feel so overwhelming. And I think that kind of idea of like the only way is through is like there is no easy way. You just have to keep going. You just have to keep persevering, and you will start seeing success. And that actually what we're just trying to do is nudge us closer to the vision rather than trying to achieve it in a week.
Penniless podcast is unfiltered, unapologetic and disruptive. So let's look at future generations. What's one fight that you hope that they won't have to keep fighting?
If I had to pick one fight, I think it would have to be for women and girls to never have to feel afraid of a man in their own home. I think that would be it. I think everything else is hugely important, but I don't see how we will ever genuinely feel equal if your home, which is meant to be your sanctuary, your safe place, doesn't feel like that. So that's what I would hope.
I actually think most people would agree with that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Penny East, CEO of the Fawcett Society, for joining me to spill the tea on people, power and politics. Now I want to hear from you. When you think about equality, what does fairness actually look like to you? If women's work still isn't being valued the same as men's, what does that say about the kind of society we're building? And what kind of world do we want to leave for the next generation of women to inherit from us? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this episode with a friend, and please don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss our next episode of DemocraTEA, where we spill the tea on people, power and politics.